Hello and welcome back to the Juha Juppi Podcast. This is episode 4 where we talk about fitness stuff, mobility, and different ways to look at fitness related things in the scope of mobility. And today what I'm going to be doing is talking about how to change your mindset on programming for if you are a swimmer and you want to do some dryland exercises. So I don't have a lot of time today. So I'm going to try to make this like 10 minutes. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's go. Perfect. So what we're going to talk about just briefly is a different way for people to look at how they could do dryland exercises. So this podcast, this video is for you if you are a swimmer or if you know a swimmer and you want them to do some exercises to complement their swimming and you're not sure exactly what to do. This is not intended on telling you exactly what exercises to do, but just to change your mindset in case you tried also some things in the past and you're not sure why things in the past haven't worked. So if we just get straight into it, the way that I'm going to be looking at this is obviously through the lens of mobility, through the functional range systems, and we can take a look at something like a freestyle stroke. So how could you use mobility to help improve a freestyle stroke? Well, if you look at it, trying to catch the water as you're bringing your arm into the water at that like top phase, that's going to require your shoulder to be in internal rotation. So from a mobility standpoint, it is important for you to be able to have a lot of internal rotation of your scapula. And what is the prerequisite to be able to do that? You need to have joint space in that shoulder for the head of the humerus to go into the glenoid fossa of the scapula. And so the more rotation, the more space that you have to move externally and internally is definitely good. Through my experience in assessing swimmers, most of them have a pretty good amount of internal rotation. Very few have absolutely spectacular ones, but most of them do have good internal rotation. But if you want to bring your swimming to the next level, it's important to look at maybe I want to be better than that. So one thing that you could look at is you can get into a sideline position, lay on your shoulder, and assess your passive range of motion for your shoulder. Passive range of motion through internal rotation. See to what degrees are you able to bring your shoulder down. Then let that up. Do that maybe twice, and then try that on your own. And you can see, oh, maybe I can only bring it 40 degrees passively, and actively I can only get 25 degrees. Well, if there's a large discrepancy, then you want to start to do things like a sleeper stretch into a pails and rails. Pails and rails stands for progressively angular isometric loading protocol and regressive angular isometric loading protocol, which really just means do this thing that will help you become stronger at the very long ranges of motion and very short ranges of motion, because a lot of people also, they only target tissue when they're in their like mid belly. They only target tissues when they're in their mid range of motion. So they look at what point, like if you look at like a strength length curve, at what point are you strongest? People tend to be strongest in the middle of that strength curve, of that length curve, and people tend to be weaker. Oh, I wish I had a whiteboard. I would write that down so easily. If we look at this in terms of, say, like a letter, the average strength length curve is probably like an upside down V. People are very strong in the middle, And then when they're very long or very short, it tapers down very quickly and they're much weaker. Well, if you can do exercises to be better when you are longer and shorter, basically when you're swimming, it captures a lot of end range rotations. Well, rather than having your strength curve be represented by like an upside down V, it can be represented by like an upside down C, to where as you get longer or as you get shorter, as you reach into those end ranges of motion, there isn't as much of a discrepancy. So if you're a swimmer, you probably want to look at internal rotation. You definitely want to look at, so whether you're going through any of the main strokes, backstroke, breaststroke, freestyle, right, butterfly, but what you want to look at is it requires a lot of obviously body control, core awareness, but scapula control. So go out of your way to learn how to utilize your scapula. It is super important. There are a lot of people that always try and recommend that people learn to like pack to bring their shoulder blades back and down. That is not going to be very functional for you during swimming. So you want to make sure that you look at doing exercises that facilitate you even learning how to use your scapula, how to push it through space, how to elevate, depress, protract, retract, how to bring it through different ranges of motion, because that's going to be absolutely essential. Obviously, core exercises, basically through every swimmer that I work with, every workout has some semblance of core as a part of it. And then legs are obviously going to be a big part of it, depending if you are a casual swimmer or if you do races, when you do something like flip turns and you're pushing off of the block, or if you're doing starts off of the block. It's really important for you to have stronger legs. So it's important for you to start at the fundamental, at the pillar of it, and see what is the current health of your ankle. Do you have a good amount of dorsiflexion? If you don't have a good amount of dorsiflexion, then it is worth looking into how to improve dorsiflexion. Do you have a good amount of inversion, eversion, plantar flexion? Because the greater, for example, when you're like leaning off the block to go to a start, the greater that your knee is able to move over your toe, the better position that it kind of allows yourself to lean forward to push quickly and explosively off of the block, or even when you do a flip turn and you're pushing off of the wall, being into a streamlined position. Oh, by the way, that's also a huge thing for swimmers, having so much shoulder flexion. You can't just have a normal amount of shoulder flexion. You have to have like a massive amount of shoulder flexion. So it's worth it to go into that, to look into that. But your ability when you're doing flip turns and pushing off of the wall, your ability to get basically into an overhead squat position and push in streamline is so important. So that requires a lot of core strength, that requires a lot of shoulder flexion, that requires you to be able to like tuck your chin back and have the upper body ability to be in this position and not lean forward, but to be able to maintain that strong posture. So also, pushing off of your legs is also really important, both from a unilateral and a bilateral position. So it's important for you, if you want to be in a position to strengthen your legs, then you should look at the prerequisites for certain leg exercises. So if you want to do squats, look into, do you have the prerequisite mobility to do squats? For example, if you want to be able to be more explosive, I found that something that helps a lot of swimmers is doing deadlifts. And a fundamental thing for the deadlifts is touching your toes. If you can't touch your toes, you probably shouldn't be doing a deadlift right now. So I'll say that is really going to be like the main part. If I were to just give you like a few short nuggets, it would be focus on having a lot of shoulder flexion through each session that you do some semblance of core exercises, whether it's half kneeling stuff, tall kneeling stuff, med ball slams, cable chops, V-sits, Russian twists, man makers. There are so many things. Hanging knee raise, just depending on what type of stroke you're trying to improve, that kind of changes what core exercise you may want to be doing. Superman's may also be functional for you. Sit-ups, functional in very brief bouts, because when you do turns, you are going into a sit-up position, but you don't necessarily need that movement in high volumes, because in a race, how many times do you actually do that position? A few, but not dozens upon dozens upon dozens. So that's an important part, and also just making sure that you focus on improving your body awareness, doing a lot of things unilaterally, doing a lot of like split squat positions, doing a lot of unilateral presses. Generally speaking, bench press is not the best exercise that facilitates shoulder health, so bench press is typically not a very required exercise when it comes to increasing the performance of swimming. It can aid it, but it's definitely not one of like the pillars of it all. So that's gonna do it for me today. I probably missed a few things because, I have some family coming over Christmas Eve. So if I miss a couple things and you want to know more information, if I missed a couple things and you want me to cover other things in greater detail, please let me know in the comment section below. Please message me. And as of right now, this podcast, God, it feels like every day that goes by, this podcast is available on new platforms. Let's see. Distribution. So currently, wow, this podcast is available on so many different platforms. You can find the Juha Juppi podcast on Anchor. That's anchor.fm. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on Breaker. You can find this on now Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and you can also find me on YouTube, Juha Juppi. Basically, just search Juha Juppi, Juhajuppi online, and you can find me in a bunch of different places. YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, podcast. I'm trying to be everywhere. I'm trying to get into Snapchat, but haven't really figured a way how to properly get into that. But anyways, thank you for listening again to the Juha Juppi Podcast. This was episode 4. I will see you soon, and thank you so much for listening. Take care.